There's a silent bug in most relationships, and no one is debugging it. It's not a lack of love. It's not even communication, at least not in the obvious sense. It's something deeper, something hidden in the system architecture of how we connect as humans. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. Imagine you're building a rocket. Every component matters. The fuel, the structure, the software, everything has to align perfectly, or the mission fails. Relationships are the same. You can have all the right pieces on the surface, but if there's a flaw in the underlying code, it will eventually crash. The hidden fear that's quietly destroying connection is this: the fear of being fully seen, not the version of you that's optimized for approval, not the version that performs well in social situations. I'm talking about the raw, unfiltered version, the one with doubts, insecurities, and questions you don't even say out loud. Most people think they want deep connection, but at the same time, they're running a defensive algorithm. They're constantly calculating risk. If I say this, will I be judged? If I show this side of me, will they pull away? So instead of transmitting truth, they send a curated signal. And over time, that signal becomes the relationship. Two people, both wanting closeness, but both holding back just enough to never actually reach it. It's like trying to establish a high bandwidth connection using a weak, filtered signal. You might get something, but it's never stable, never fully real. The paradox is that the very thing people do to protect the relationship is the thing that slowly weakens it. Think about it. When you hide parts of yourself, you're not just avoiding rejection. You're also preventing the other person from truly knowing you. And if they don't truly know you, the connection becomes theoretical. It exists, but it's not grounded in reality. And here's where it gets more complex. The other person is doing the same thing. So now you have two people, both slightly disconnected from their real selves, trying to connect with each other. It's like two AI systems trained on incomplete data, trying to understand each other perfectly. There will always be errors. Over time, those small errors compound. Misunderstandings happen. Assumptions fill in the gaps. And slowly the connection starts to feel off. Not broken, just not what it could be. And most people don't trace it back to the root cause. They think the issue is something external. Timing, stress, differences in personality. But the real issue is internal. It's the fear. Because being fully seen means losing control of the outcome. It means accepting that someone might see the real you and decide it's not what they want. And that's a hard risk to take. So instead, people choose partial visibility. It feels safer. But safe doesn't scale into deep connection. If you look at any system that works at a high level, there's a principle. Transparency improves performance. The more accurate the data, the better the outcome. Relationships follow the same rule. The more honest and open the signal, the stronger the connection. But honesty here doesn't mean saying everything impulsively. It means aligning what you feel with what you express, reducing the gap between your internal world and your external communication. That's where real connection starts. And it's not instant. You don't go from guarded to completely open overnight. It's iterative. Small steps, small risks. You share something slightly more real than you normally would. You express a thought you'd usually filter out. You allow a moment of vulnerability without immediately trying to cover it up, and something interesting happens. If the other person is also willing to step out of their defensive pattern, the system starts to stabilize. The signal becomes clear, the connection becomes more real, but if one or both people stay in protection mode, the distance remains. So the question isn't, do we love each other? The real question is, are we willing to be seen by each other? Because without that, everything else is just surface-level compatibility. And with it, even imperfect people can build something real. So if a relationship feels like it's slowly losing depth, it's worth asking not what's missing on the outside, but what's being held back on the inside. Because sometimes the biggest threat to connection isn't conflict, it's the quiet decision to stay hidden. The fear of being fully seen operates quietly, almost like background code running without awareness, shaping how people behave in relationships. On the surface, everything can look functional. Conversations happen, time is shared, emotions are expressed, but beneath that layer, there is often a controlled version of reality being presented. People reveal enough to maintain connection, but not enough to risk exposure. This creates a subtle but persistent gap between who they are and what they allow others to experience. Being fully seen means allowing someone access to thoughts that are not perfectly organized, emotions that are not always positive, and parts of identity that may not align with expectations. It requires dropping the internal filter that constantly edits, adjusts, and optimizes for acceptance. That filter exists for a reason. It's a defense mechanism built from past experiences, moments where honesty led to rejection, misunderstanding, or discomfort. Over time, the system learns to avoid those outcomes by limiting transparency. In relationships, this shows up in small but significant ways. A person might avoid sharing what truly bothers them, choosing instead to keep the peace. They might downplay their needs to avoid appearing demanding. They might present confidence when they actually feel uncertain. Each of these decisions seems minor in isolation, but collectively they reshape the connection. The relationship becomes based not on reality, but on a managed version of it. This creates a paradox. The individual wants to be understood and accepted for who they are, but at the same time, they are preventing that understanding by controlling what is visible. The more they hide, the less accurately they can be known. And when they are not fully known, any sense of connection starts to feel incomplete, even if everything appears stable on the surface. There is also a feedback loop involved. When someone hides parts of themselves, the other person responds to the version they see. That response may seem positive, but it is directed at an incomplete representation. This can reinforce the fear because it creates uncertainty. The question becomes, would they still respond this way if they knew everything? Without testing that, the doubt remains. Without testing that, the doubt remains unresolved. Over time, this can lead to emotional distance, not because of conflict or lack of effort, but because the foundation of the connection is limited. It's like trying to build something complex with partial data. The structure may hold for a while, but it lacks depth and resilience. When pressure increases, through stress, change, or challenges, the limitations become more visible. The fear itself is not irrational. Being fully seen does involve risk. It removes control over how others perceive you. It exposes parts that may not fit neatly into expectations. It requires tolerating uncertainty about the outcome. But avoiding that risk comes with its own cost. It limits the potential of the relationship from the start. What makes this dynamic more complex is that both people are often operating under the same fear. Each is managing their own visibility, assuming the other is doing the same, and adjusting accordingly. This creates a system where partial truths interact with other partial truths. Communication happens, but it lacks full alignment with internal reality. Breaking this pattern doesn't require a complete shift all at once. It starts with recognizing where the filter is active, noticing when something real is about to be expressed but gets adjusted or withheld. Understanding that these moments are not random, but part of a consistent pattern driven by the same underlying fear. Gradually, it becomes possible to reduce the gap between internal experience and external expression, allowing more accurate signals to pass through, creating the conditions for a connection that is based on what is actually there, rather than what is being carefully presented. Curated communication creates emotional distance in a way that is subtle, gradual, and often invisible to the people experiencing it. It doesn't feel like disconnection at first. In fact, it can feel like the opposite. Conversations are smooth, conflicts are minimized, and interactions appear efficient. But what's actually happening beneath the surface is a continuous process of editing, filtering, and optimizing what gets expressed. Instead of sharing raw, unprocessed thoughts and emotions, people transmit a refined version designed to achieve a specific outcome. This process is similar to compressing data. You remove what seems unnecessary, smooth out inconsistencies, and deliver something that is easier to receive. The problem is that in human relationships, those unnecessary parts often carry the most meaning. The hesitation in a voice, the uncertainty in a thought, the contradiction in a feeling. These are the elements that make communication real. When they are removed, the signal becomes cleaner, but less authentic. People curate their communication for different reasons. Sometimes it's to avoid conflict. Saying exactly what you feel can introduce friction, and friction is uncomfortable. So instead, people choose safer language, softer expressions, or partial truths. Other times, it's about maintaining a certain image. There is an internal model of how one should appear. Calm, confident, understanding, and communication is adjusted to fit that model. In other cases, it's about control. By managing what is shared, a person tries to influence how they are perceived and how the interaction unfolds. At a surface level, this seems effective. Curated communication reduces immediate tension. It keeps conversations predictable. It allows both people to operate within a controlled environment. But over time, it creates a disconnect between what is felt and what is expressed. That gap becomes the defining feature of the relationship. When communication is consistently filtered, the other person is not interacting with your actual internal state. They are interacting with a representation. And while that representation may be accurate in some ways, it is incomplete. Important data is missing. As a result, their responses, decisions, and understanding are based on partial information. This leads to a form of misalignment that is difficult to detect. Both people believe they are communicating, but the connection lacks depth. Conversations may cover many topics, but they rarely reach the level where true understanding happens. There is a sense of being known, but not fully. A sense of closeness, but not complete connection. One of the key effects of curated communication is that it prevents real feedback loops from forming. In any system, feedback is essential for adjustment and growth. You send a signal, receive a response, and refine your approach based on that response. But if the initial signal is filtered, the feedback you receive is also distorted. You are not getting a response to your true self, but to the version you presented. This creates uncertainty. Even if the feedback is positive, it doesn't fully resolve the question of acceptance. There is always a layer of doubt. Is this response based on who I really am, or just what I showed? That uncertainty can lead to overthinking, second-guessing, and further filtering, reinforcing the cycle. Another consequence is emotional buildup. When thoughts and feelings are consistently edited or withheld, they don't disappear. They accumulate. Small frustrations that are not expressed remain in the system. Needs that are not communicated stay unmet. Over time, this can lead to a sense of imbalance, where one or both people feel something is off, but cannot clearly identify why. This buildup can eventually surface in unexpected ways. A minor issue may trigger a disproportionately strong reaction. A conversation that seems simple can suddenly become tense. From the outside, it may look like an overreaction, but in reality, it is the result of unexpressed data accumulating over time. Curated communication also affects trust, but not in an obvious way. It's not about dishonesty in the traditional sense. It's about consistency between internal experience and external expression. When that consistency is low, trust becomes fragile, not because of betrayal, but because of a lack of clarity. The other person may sense that something is being held back, even if they cannot articulate it. This sensing creates a subtle form of distance. It's not a conscious decision to pull away, but an automatic response to incomplete information. Humans are highly responsive to authenticity, even at a subconscious level. When communication feels slightly off, even if it's technically correct, it affects how safe and connected the interaction feels. The challenge is that curated communication is often reinforced by short-term success. When filtering prevents conflict or maintains harmony, it feels like the right strategy. The immediate outcome is positive, so the behaviors are repeated. But this short-term optimization comes at the cost of long-term depth. Breaking this pattern requires a shift in how communication is approached. Instead of optimizing for immediate comfort, the focus shifts to accuracy. This doesn't mean expressing everything without consideration. It means reducing unnecessary filtering and allowing more of the real signal to pass through. This can start with small adjustments. Expressing a thought that would normally be softened, acknowledging uncertainty instead of masking it, sharing a feeling without immediately reframing it into something more acceptable. Each of these actions increases alignment between internal state and external expression. As this alignment increases, the quality of communication changes. Conversations become less about maintaining a certain image and more about exchanging real information. This allows for more accurate responses, which in turn creates more meaningful feedback loops. Over time, this can reduce the emotional distance created by curation. The connection becomes more grounded in reality rather than in managed perception. Both people have access to more complete data, which allows for better understanding and more stable interaction. However, this shift also introduces vulnerability. Less filtering means less control over how communication is received. There is a possibility of misunderstanding, disagreement, or discomfort. But these outcomes are part of real interaction. They provide information that is necessary for building something that is not just functional, but deeply connected. When curated communication decreases, the relationship transitions from a controlled system to a responsive one. It becomes less predictable, but more real. Less optimized, but more meaningful. The focus moves from avoiding negative outcomes to engaging with what is actually present. This change doesn't eliminate all challenges. It doesn't guarantee perfect understanding or constant harmony, but it removes the artificial layer that limits connection. It allows both people to engage with each other as they are, rather than as they are presented. And in that space, communication stops being a performance and becomes a process of discovery, where each interaction adds clarity instead of maintaining a carefully constructed version of reality. Honest expression strengthens deep, stable relationships by increasing alignment between what is internally experienced and what is externally communicated. It acts as a form of high-fidelity data transmission, where the signal being sent closely matches the actual state of the system. In human terms, this means thoughts, emotions, and needs are expressed with minimal distortion. The result is a connection that is built on accurate information, rather than assumptions or projections. In most relationships, there is some level of discrepancy between what a person feels and what they express. This discrepancy can be intentional or automatic. It may come from a desire to protect the relationship, avoid discomfort, or maintain a certain image. Avoid discomfort or maintain a certain image. While these motivations are understandable, they introduce noise into communication. The more noise there is, the harder it becomes to maintain a clear and stable connection. Honest expression reduces this noise. It doesn't mean saying everything without consideration or ignoring the impact of words. It means communicating in a way that reflects the truth of the internal experience as closely as possible while still being respectful and intentional. This creates clarity. When both people in a relationship have access to clear information, they can respond more effectively. Clarity leads to better understanding. Instead of guessing what the other person feels or needs, there is direct decay as to that information. This reduces the reliance on assumptions, which are often inaccurate. Assumptions are a common source of conflict because they fill in gaps with interpretations that may not reflect reality. Honest expression minimizes these gaps, making interactions more precise. Precision in communication contributes to stability. When misunderstandings are reduced, there is less friction in the system. Issues can be addressed earlier before they escalate. Small concerns can be discussed in real time rather than being suppressed and accumulating over time. This creates a dynamic where the relationship is continuously adjusting and improving rather than storing unresolved tension. Another important aspect is that honest expression builds trust. Trust is not only about reliability in actions, but also about consistency in communication. When someone's words consistently reflect their true thoughts and feelings, it becomes easier to rely on what they say. There is less need to read between the lines or interpret hidden meanings. This transparency creates a sense of safety. Safety in this context is not about the absence of conflict, but about the predictability of honesty. Even if the message is difficult, knowing that it is real allows the other person to engage with it constructively. It removes the uncertainty that often comes with filtered communication, where it is unclear what is being left unsaid. Honest expression also enables deeper emotional connection. When a person shares their real experiences, it creates an opportunity for the other person to understand them on a more complete level. This understanding goes beyond surface-level interaction. It involves recognizing patterns, values, fears, and motivations. The more complete this understanding is, the stronger the connection becomes. There is also a reciprocal effect. When one person communicates honestly, it increases the likelihood that the other person will do the same. It sets a standard within the relationship. Over time, this can create an environment where authenticity becomes the default mode of interaction. In such an environment, both people can operate with less defensive filtering. This reduces the cognitive load associated with maintaining a curated version of oneself. There is less need to constantly monitor and adjust what is being said. Communication becomes more direct and efficient. Energy that was previously used for filtering can be redirected toward understanding and engagement. Honest expression also supports personal growth within the relationship. When thoughts and feelings are communicated openly, they can be examined, challenged, and refined through interaction. The other person can provide perspectives that may not have been considered. This exchange of ideas contributes to development at an individual level, as well as within the relationship. At the same time, honest expression requires a level of responsibility. Communicating truthfully does not mean disregarding the impact of words. It involves being aware of how something is expressed, not just what is expressed. The goal is to transmit accurate information in a way that can be received and understood. This requires a balance between authenticity and consideration. Another factor is timing. Honest expression is most effective when it is delivered in a context where it can be processed. Sharing something important at the wrong moment can reduce its effectiveness or create unnecessary tension. Being mindful of timing ensures that the message contributes to clarity rather than confusion. Over time, consistent, honest expression creates a strong foundation. The relationship becomes resilient because it is based on real data. When challenges arise, there is a framework for addressing them directly. Instead of avoiding issues or allowing them to grow, both people can engage with them in a constructive way. This doesn't eliminate difficulty. Honest conversations can be uncomfortable. They can reveal differences, highlight problems, or challenge existing assumptions. But these outcomes are part of maintaining a real connection. They provide opportunities for adjustment and alignment. Without honest expression, relationships rely more heavily on interpretation and guesswork. This increases the likelihood of errors. With honest expression, the margin for error is reduced. Both people have access to the same core information, which improves coordination. Coordination is essential for long-term stability. It allows both individuals to move in the same direction, even as circumstances change. When communication is clear and aligned with reality, decisions can be made more effectively. Expectations can be set more accurately. The relationship can adapt to new conditions without losing coherence. In this way, honest expression functions as a stabilizing force. It keeps the connection grounded in what is actually happening, rather than what is assumed or imagined. It ensures that the relationship evolves based on real input, allowing both people to engage with each other in a way that is direct, transparent, and continuously aligned with their true experiences.